You've probably heard that Spider-Man has a couple clones, but what if I told you there's over 50 Peter Parkers, 30 Ben Reillys, 4 Miles Moraleses, a Deadpool, a Nightcrawler, and even a DC character? It might sound a little confusing, and it is, so I'm covering the first comic appearance of every Spidey clone in the hopes of understanding it a bit more. We kick it off with the most popular clone in Amazing Spider-Man number 149. Spidey has just been kidnapped by the Jackal, who instantly goes into a villain monologue about his backstory, explaining that he was once a regular teacher at Peter's college, who started stalking Gwen Stacy, treating her like his own daughter, until she died, and he mentally snapped, cloning her and then killing his coworker after being caught, convincing himself that an alternate personality called the Jackal did it. Then he knocks Peter out, later waking up inside of a stadium, right next to his first clone, Ben Reilly. Or wait, no, which one's the clone? They get into a fight over which one is real before realizing Jackal has Ned Leeds held hostage, deciding to team up to save him, their heroism suddenly unlocking the clone Gwen's memory. So she unmasks the Jackal, which causes his original personality, Miles Warren, to come back out, realizing he's responsible for his coworker's death, and then diving into a bomb he made. The bomb also buries one of the Spider-Men, the survivor deciding he must be the real Peter, right? Well, that question is going to be a recurring theme for this video, as the Spidey in the rubble is eventually revealed to have actually survived. Before we get back to that storyline though, we gotta check out some of Peter's most obscure clones in Spidey Super Stories number 25. Peter's Spidey senses suddenly start going off, leading him into a room with nothing but a mirror, assuming it must have just been wrong. But it turns out the mirror is a device invented by Dr. Doom, creating Webman, an evil clone of Peter. He starts just committing crimes until Spidey shows up to stop him, quickly realizing the mirror must have been the cause. Because of course, that makes more sense than it just being, I don't know, another guy in a costume. Anyways, he heads back to the empty room, and Doom sets the machine off again, creating Webby 2, though Peter just dives through the mirror, disintegrating the clones and capturing Doom. Sticking to the obscure clones, we get Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man number 31. Peter is just woken up after being kidnapped by Carrie, a clone of the Jackal who got left in the cloning pod after the original one died, rapidly aging beyond death before a random college student let him out, eventually realizing he has the power to disintegrate organic matter. And just like the original Jackal, he's decided to clone Peter, though his didn't turn out quite right. So it wants to become one with Spidey before the college student who helped Carrion comes rushing in, though he turns on him, resulting in one of the most visceral deaths I've seen from this era of comics. Peter uses the distraction to break free, just in time for the White Tiger to also come rushing in, getting into a fight with Carrion that starts a fire. Spidey and the Tiger managing to escape, but Carrion gets too close to the spider amoeba, being dragged back into the burning building, quickly realizing his powers don't work on the clone as the comic ends. Jumping all the way to the 90s, we get Infinity War number 1. Thanos is at his farm when he suddenly starts sensing a massive shift in the universe, cutting down to Earth where Spider-Man is being followed by Doppelganger, a twisted animalistic version of the wall crawler. We quickly cut back to the cosmic scale though, as Galactus has just found Eternity, the embodiment of the entire universe, in a catatonic state, which is probably not a good thing. Back on Earth, we see a few more heroes fighting twisted versions of themselves, as Thanos is finally contacted by the man causing this all, Magus, an evil clone of Adam Warlock who was created after he used the Infinity Stones to become a purely logical being with no good or evil. Magus reveals he's created a shadow of every hero in the universe, and if the shadow manages to beat them in a fight, they take their place, all in an attempt to create an army that could steal the stones from Warlock. Thanos rejects the plan though, as he recently collected all 6 stones in the Infinity Gauntlet crossover, quickly realizing that much power is too much for even him to handle. So how could he trust the physical embodiment of evil with them? We then cut back to Earth, where some heroes have won their fights, but others lost. Spider-Man actually beats Doppelganger, but funnily enough, when Infinity War ends, Doppelganger is the only clone who stays alive, becoming a recurring villain for Spidey, and even joining Carnage's weird little family dynamic he had going on with Shriek, Carrion, and Demogoblin. The comic finally ends with Thanos going to the Infinity Watch for help, a group of Adam Warlock's friends who he trusted with the Infinity Stones. Finally reaching the actual clone saga, we've got Web of Spider-Man number 119. Ben Reilly has been severely injured in a battle with Venom, passing out in front of his apartment and being brought to a hospital, though there's a reporter trying to track him down, so Ben tries to escape via the roof, ending up right in front of Scream, who's desperately searching for Venom in the hopes that he can teach her how to control her symbiote, but he decides he doesn't care and just runs away. Our focus cut cutting across the city to a group of mobsters discussing a territory dispute, deciding to send their top hitman out to kill a rival boss, though he denies the job, and then kills them with a chandelier, including incinerating one guy's face with nothing but his hand. The hitman's identity stays a mystery for a while, but he's eventually revealed to be Kaine, another clone of Peter created by the Jackal. We cut back to Ben though, as he's remembered his uncle's final speech, deciding to create some new impact webs before heading out. His Scream is rampaging through Times Square, trying to get Venom's attention, which works, and they get into a brief fight before Ben shows up and the comic ends. Jumping just a few issues ahead, we get Web of Spider-Man number 122. Ben Reilly is swinging around New York when he suddenly gets a vision of the Jackal, following his spidey senses off into a snowy forest, where the Jackal suddenly jumps out. Or wait, no, this is actually Jack, a clone of Peter whose cells are degrading, so he wears a Jackal costume to hide it. He's not alone though, calling out his friend, the Guardian, another clone of Peter, though this one is in constant torturous pain, immediately attacking Ben as we cut to Peter, who's hanging out with his pregnant wife, MJ, quickly getting a vision of her transforming into Gwen, before also getting a vision of the Jackal, running off towards the same forest where Ben is currently getting his ass whooped. Jack and Guardian just leaving him injured in the snow, while Kaine watches from afar. Releasing the same month is Spectacular Spider-Man number 222. It turns out Jack and Guardian were protecting a secret lab run by a clone of the Jackal, though they got into a massive fight, and now Kaine is searching through the rubble, trying to find evidence that shows which one of them is the original Peter Parker. Unfortunately, all they end up finding is another Peter clone, this one named Spider-Side, briefly cutting to Jack, begging the Jackal to fix his cellular degradation, instead of just screwing with Peter, and being swiftly backhanded in return. We then cut back to the three Petes as they go off on their own. Spider-Side hitchhiking with a random trucker, Ben stalking Flash Thompson before being jumped by the Jackal, and finally Peter is given a letter by Kaine, supposedly proving that Peter is the original and Ben is the clone, though he actually doesn't trust Kaine. Skipping a little further along the Clone Saga, we get Amazing Spider-Man number 404. Remember how Kaine just said Peter was the original? Well, Jackal has just revealed that Ben was actually the original, crushing Peter's world, getting into a brief emotional fight before Spider-Side shows up, telling Ben he doesn't belong here with the clones. Spider-Side is a little unique though, having full control over his molecules, being ripped apart by Ben and then reforming his entire body. We then cut to Kaine, who's beating the shit out of Jackal, pissed that he seems to be just fucking with Peter for fun, though Kaine also agrees that Ben doesn't belong here, helping to restrain him while Jackal knocks him out. Spider-Side also wanders off and runs into this dude named the Scryer, before we cut back to Ben, who wakes up in a room filled with clones. That's not right. There we go. Finishing off our journey in the original Clone Saga, we get Spider-Man Maximum Clonage Omega number 1. Ben is desperately trying to fight off Jackal's army of clones, though they've started to degrade and melt, allowing him to easily escape. Meanwhile, we cut to Peter, who's decided he's not worthy of MJ's love because he's a clone, swinging away with the Gwen clone, before we again cut, this time to the Jackal and his Jacks. 4 more clones of Peter that wear Jackal outfits. He's decided he wants to clone and replace the entire world, setting up a device that will release the Carrion virus, which kills anything that isn't a clone. Unfortunately for him, Spider-Side shows up, having made a deal with the Scryer to turn on the Jackal, though they start fighting in the Daily Bugle, so Ben Reilly joins in to help save the staff. Their fight goes on for a while, before Jackal and Spider-Side get knocked out a window, Ben barely managing to catch them, but Spider-Side, blinded with rage, accidentally cuts the web attached to himself, plummeting to his death. Ben pulls the Jackal back up just in time for Peter and Gwen to show up, the 2 Spider-Men trying to dismantle Jackal's machine while fighting off the Jacks. Eventually, they shut it down and get ready to send the Jackal to prison, but Gwen whips out a gun, claiming she's gonna kill him, but he dives for the gun, accidentally knocking her off the building, though he actually tries to save her, as Spider-Man failing to save Gwen is what caused the Jackal to become evil in the first place. Unfortunately though, he's too heavy for the telephone wire she's hanging onto, causing our second death by falling of this comic, while Gwen is saved by Ben Reilly. The comic ends with Peter offering Ben the chance to take back the title of Spider-Man. Spider-Man. But Ben decides they've been living separate lives for too long at this point. Swapping back is simply too easy of an answer. We get our first crossover clone in Spider-Boy #1. This comic takes place in a universe where Marvel and DC's characters were smashed together, like Superman and Captain America becoming the Super Soldier. And just like regular Captain America, everybody wants to recreate him. So Thunderbolt Ross funds an experiment run by a college intern, Peter Parker. Unfortunately, it goes wrong, and the experiment explodes, vaporizing Peter and creating a new person, Spider-Boy, which turns out to be a clone of Peter, but with no memories and some of Superman's powers. Ross decides to raise him like his own son, even giving him the "with great powers" speech. Wait, no, they only do that when Ross gets gunned down in an alleyway, leading Spider-Boy to become a superhero, fighting villains like Bizarnage, while he also becomes a reporter for the Daily Bugle. JJ sending him on a mission to take photos of King Lizard, easily taking him down by stealing one of the Atom's shrinking rays. Finally, the comic ends with Spider-Boy's assistant, Dr. Octavius, introducing a new ally for Peter, MJ, aka the Insect Queen. We'll get back to the main universe later, but first we gotta stop in the Ultimate Universe for Ultimate Spider-Man #61. Kurt Connors has just found out Peter is Spider-Man, running some tests on his blood and realizing it could be used to cure diseases like cancer. Connors quickly asking Peter if he'd allow them to do more research, which he accepts, as long as Connors lies about where he got the blood. We flash forwards to 2 months later as the Punisher is trying to stop a robbery, but Spider-Man doesn't trust him, so he ties up both Frank and the thief, though he's injured in the fight, asking Connors to help stitch him up. The comic ends with Kurt checking in with his lab assistant, Ben Reilly, to see the progress on Little Ben, a clone created from mixing Peter's blood with the Venom symbiote, later becoming Ultimate Carnage. Jumping 2 years ahead, we land in the Ultimate Universe's clone saga, beginning in Ultimate Spider-Man #97. Peter and his girlfriend, Kitty Pryde, are having some relationship problems, so he decides the best solution is to hang out with his ex-girlfriend MJ at the mall, which ends up going great until a food stand comes crashing through the ceiling. Peter changing into a Spidey suit and finding the Scorpion, yelling about how he knows he's been here before. Spidey doesn't get the chance to talk to him though, as the cops open fire on him, so Peter has to take the Scorpion down before he kills them, eventually breaking his mask and revealing he's a clone of Peter. The comic ending with Mary Jane being kidnapped from her bedroom. We're gonna stick with the storyline for a while, heading right back into Ultimate Spider-Man #98. Spidey has just brought the Scorpion to the Fantastic Four, them testing his DNA and confirming he's a clone of some kid named Peter Parker, unmasking himself to reveal he is Peter Parker. And to make it even worse, they mentioned that Scorpion's tail is surgically attached to his spine. Peter freaks out and runs home, though Aunt May lets him know that MJ has gone missing, so he tries to find her at one of their favorite spots. But instead, he ends up finding Jessica Drew, a female clone of Peter, though she doesn't tell him that, just giving him a bunch of vague answers which pisses him off, getting into a brief fight that she wins, swinging away while Peter goes home to find Gwen Stacy, which shouldn't be possible as Carnage killed Gwen a few months ago. Again, just hopping one issue ahead, it's Ultimate Spider-Man #99. Peter is freaking out that his dead friend is now standing in his home, Gwen mentioning that all she can remember is waking up in a hospital room filled with dead doctors. Aunt May then shows up and immediately tries to call the police, Peter talking her down and deciding the only way to explain this all to her is to reveal he's Spider-Man. It doesn't quite go how we expected though, as she kicks him out of the house for the years of lying to her. But before he can make it out the door, his father, Richard Parker, shows up. Wait a second, why did we do the whole Flash to character thing? Oh, he's an aged up clone of Peter with false memories, isn't he? Anyways, we cut to Mary Jane, who's being held in a giant tube by Peter, him telling her he's gonna make her stronger, just like him, before revealing he isn't her Peter. He's the Ultimate Kaine. The comic ending with Reed Richards calling Nick Fury to let him know about the Scorpion Peter clone. And ending off our journey in the Ultimate Universe, we get Ultimate Spider-Man #100. Kaine is about to start altering MJ's genetics, but he's suddenly stopped by our final Ultimate Spidey clone, the 6-armed Tarantula, though Kaine's 2 arms prove stronger, beating him unconscious while Mary Jane watches. We then cut to the Parker household, as Richard is explaining how he didn't actually die in a plane crash. He just faked his death to hide the research he was doing with the Venom symbiote, secretly working in a lab with Henry Gyrick, though it's eventually revealed that Richard did die in the crash, and this clone of Peter has just been convinced he is his own father. Unfortunately, right before he's able to explain how Gwen is alive again, Nick Fury and a massive squad of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents show up, demanding they all come in for questioning. The stress of the situation triggering Gwen to transform into Carnage, as it turns out that the creature had absorbed her personality after killing her. Diving out the house as Aunt May has a heart attack. The comic ending with Kaine congratulating MJ on becoming a new her. We get our first non-Spidey focused comic in Wolverine's number 5. Logan has died, and a team named Paradise has recruited 5 of his closest associates to find his corpse. Skydiving into a castle in Finland, running into a man named Starky Grapes, though Shogun just decapitates him before Parky, Barky, Harky, Zarky, and Glarky Grapes show up, revealing they're all clones, and that the castle belongs to Mr. Sinister. Honestly, I'm surprised we made it this far into a video about clones without mentioning this guy. Anyways, he kidnaps and separates them, the Wolverines ending up in a dungeon where they meet Ben Reilly, and 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 Ben Reilly, as Mr. Sinister has created 13 clones of Ben, though we quickly cut to the Paradise team, who are in an arena fighting Fin Fang Boom, a clone of Fin Fang Foom combined with Thor, though Shogun easily chops the Thor part in half, killing the creature. The comic ends with Mr. Sinister watching the two teams, as the X-Men suddenly burst into his room to stop him. Our next clone is a mix of 2 different characters, though I guarantee you'll never be able to guess which ones, as we hop into Spider-Man/Deadpool number 9. A group of Spidey's most forgettable foes have teamed up as the Hateful Hexad to prove they can be great villains. This entire comic just being a massive fight between them, Spidey, and Deadpool. We also get a brief flashback showing Deadpool having some relationship problems with his girlfriend Shikla, as Spidey convinced him to become a good guy, which ended up magically healing his face, so she's not attracted to him anymore. Anyways, the duo ends up winning the fight, though before Spidey's able to web them all up, the Hateful Hexad just start randomly dying, until finally the killer reveals herself as Itsy Bitsy, a hybrid of Spider-Man and Deadpool, who constantly refers to them as daddy for some reason. The comic ends with her swinging away, offering to let them touch her next time, while Swap bursts into the room, trying to arrest the heroes. It's time to forget the entire first arc of this video, because it's all out the window in Amazing Spider-Man number 22. Ben Reilly has just died, decaying like most of Jackal's clones do, revealing that Peter was always the original, and the Jackal had lied about Ben being first. Though suddenly, Ben wakes up, but the Jackal walks in, electrocuting him to death before he wakes up again, and is promptly drowned, waking up again and being frozen, again and being infected, again and being burned. In total, being killed and cloned 29 times. All as part of some new experiment the Jackal is running to let clones retain memories after death. Eventually, Ben gets sick of the cycle, bursting through the glass and swapping places with Miles, cloning him a ton of times, while also solving the cellular degradation problem with a daily pill. Ben then offers each Miles clone the choice between working for him in return for the pills, or leaving and just praying they're the original who won't degrade. They end up all agreeing to work for him, and Ben becomes the new Jackal. The comic ending with him revealing his identity to Peter, and offering him the chance to clone Uncle Ben. We get our final Peter clone in Amazing Spider-Man number 2. Man, Mountain, Marco, and the Ringer have just been easily beaten by Spidey, though he has to quickly rush to class where the Lizard suddenly walks in. But before he's able to react, Kurt reveals he's created a device that gives him control over his transformation, so the school has rehired him. He's not the only villain in the school though, as Taskmaster and Black Ant have broken in, trying to steal the machine that originally created the spider that bit Peter. Taskmaster also mentions that he went to the School of Good Gooning. Anyways, the Lizard tries to protect the students, but apparently his device also stops him from participating in fights, freezing him in place, while Peter causes a chemical explosion that allows him to swap into a Spidey suit and easily take down the two thieves. That's not the only thing the chemicals did though, as the comic ends with Spider-Man helping a student who turns out to be Peter Parker himself. Peter isn't the only one that gets to have fun with clone sagas, as we hop into Miles Morales' Spider-Man number 18. Miles has just found his parents' apartment completely trashed, suddenly being sucker punched by Asset 42, a clone of himself. The comic then cuts back and forth between their fight, Miles' friends forming a protest against the new laws making teenage superheroes illegal, and Miles' parents being cornered by this group of Mario fanboys. Jeff just running away. Eventually, the two Spider-Men venom blast each other, Miles later waking up tied to a chair next to the Assessor. Peter spent years with only one clone before more showed up, but Miles only spends about 6 issues. As next up is Miles Morales Spider-Man number 25. The news is going crazy with stories of Spider-Man committing crimes, which is weird because Miles is at home not committing crimes. You might assume it's just Asset 42, but he actually turned out to be a temporary clone that melted after a few days. Miles gets into a brief argument with Genki since he started dating Miles' ex, deciding to get his mind off of it by investigating this new Spider-Man, suddenly being jumped by Peter, fighting him for a bit until he knocks him down with a venom blast and explains there's a clone of him, proving he's the real Miles by mentioning a crappy birthday card Peter got him, swinging off together to find Shift, a clone of Miles who can transform his body at will, a super unique ability that no other Spider-Man clone has ever had before. Anyways, they get into a fight, but the two of them are able to overpower the lone clone and web him up, though he's quickly saved by his brothers, Salim and Mind Spinner. And our final comic of the video is Sins of Sinister number 1. Mr. Sinister is slowly infecting the X-Men, having already taken over the minds of Professor X, Emma Frost, and Hope Summers, using them to convince the rest of the mutants to share the power of resurrection with regular humans, which turns out to have just been a way for Mr. Sinister to infect the entire world with his mind virus. First starting off by silencing the press like J. Jonah Jameson, while a sinister forge creates an orbital cannon, killing the living island Krakoa, an infected Wolverine even using that as a distraction to stab my boy Douglock. We then flash forwards through the years, as he manipulates Juggernaut into killing Thanos, Namor into killing Doom, and even Captain America into killing the US president. Eventually, Storm, one of the few remaining non-infected mutants, decides they've gone too far, running away before Sinister is able to capture her, though she can't do much to stop them. As we keep flashing forward, Sebastian Shaw converting what is essentially mutant heaven into a hell, Magic kicking Asgard deep into space, Sinister just straight up killing Wanda instead of infecting her, and then finally deciding to start creating hybrid clones, one of which being the Wall Crawler, a mix of Spider-Man and Nightcrawler, Sinister tasking him with kidnapping Foggy Nelson. The comic ends with the High Council of Krakoa deciding they don't need Mr. Sinister anymore. They can take over the world all by themselves, though luckily he planned for this, as he's created a very complicated and lore-heavy machine that hijacks Moira McTaggart's mutant ability to reset time to her birth whenever she dies, creating a clone of her that basically acts as a save point, allowing him to kill it if anything goes wrong, reverting time back to when he created the clone. Well, at least he normally has that machine, but someone stole it, so now he's stuck in this timeline.